my God, what's that up in the sky?
It's a bird.
It's a plane. No.
It's a Dr. DC Double Dose. It's just a podcast on the books. It's a Dr. DC Double Dose.
Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC's Double Dosed. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
And for the first time, and never recorded before,
Yes.
certainly never.
This is not us taking a mulligan.
Nope, no, not at all. This is the very first time we are talking about Aquaman.
Yeah, that's right.
With right out of the theater, that's today.
Yep, we're standing in the lobby.
That's it, yep.
I'm ordering Twizzlers.
It's weird that I brought the mixer with me, and
Everyone's looking at us.
yeah, it's strange, but it's all for you. Are you not entertained?
Yeah. We watched Aquaman. So because you guys are the Patreon subscribers, you guys get our first takes on the movie. I mean, I assume if you're listening to this,
And these are our very first takes, fresh takes.
we're not saying them again.
Nope.
Certainly not because we've had any technological issues.
Nope, definitely not.
If you're listening to this, I assume you've watched the movie, but if not, just heads up, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the movie.
Heavy spoilers.
Like, all about the movie. This is
Only
not a
spoilers.
spoiler-free thing. Yeah.
no, absolutely.
So I'm not gonna go through like what the movie's about because I assume you've all seen it, but just quick refresher. It's basically
It's about a man who
Orm-
who can talk to
yeah. Once there was a boy. Aquaman has to stop Orm from uniting the armies of the Seven Seas to attack the surface, and he has to do it by finding the trident of King Atlan and becoming the true heir and the king he's meant to be. So we watched Aquaman. Richard, what did you think?
I sure liked it. I
That almost sounds like you have criticisms.
me?
Well, let's go through. Why don't we talk about some of the things you liked about it? We'll talk about some of the things you thought didn't work, and yeah,
Absolutely. So, I mean, this was a visually stunning movie, without a doubt. Yeah. It is a big CGI-ness movie. Hard to not do with a water-based super world.
and a civilization that doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's going into it, I knew that.
Of course.
You can't expect less. And you being someone who prefers practical effects, I think, over CGI
I do.
even.
Yeah.
And those tends to be what makes the better DC movies, in my opinion, are more practical. That being said, it's hard to compete with how beautiful this movie was.
Yeah.
I wanted to spend all of my time in their underwater worlds.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought that the writing was okay. The general story, I think, felt very comic book appropriate, and
I mean, it's essentially an adaptation of Throne of Atlantis.
yeah, absolutely. I really liked. I really enjoyed the way they did the origin of Aquaman. The way that it wasn't necessarily this sort of. It wasn't. You spend half the movie with him as a kid and he slowly grows up. You get this sort of flashback way of doing it, which is something that you don't often get in these origin movies.
Yeah.
Usually you spend the first half of the movie with them without powers, and then they ended up getting something happens and they get them. This is just you begin with it starts and ends with a love story, which I really I think that's totally fine, and I don't necessarily need that, but I think that it works well from a narrative standpoint.
Yeah.
I like the Momoa's sort of narration at the beginning of the end as well.
Yep.
I really I'm the son of a lighthouse owner or whatever, blah 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 blah.
Just the owner of the lighthouse.
Yeah.
He's the lighthouse keeper.
Yes, whatever. But I enjoyed that part of it, and I like Nicole Kidman's great in it.
as Queen Atlanta.
She you get very little of her, but she's very believable in the role. I mean, she tends to, like, she's never an actress I think about instantly, but whenever I see her in anything, I always enjoy her. She always does a good job. She's believable in the part of it. I think that that scene with him as a kid at the aquarium is such a badass scene.
Well, yeah, he's getting bullied by a couple of kids because he's talking to the fish in the aquarium. He's like talking out loud, and these kids are bullying him, and then the shark just starts like breaking the glass.
It's awesome.
But it's the first time we see the voo, 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 voo,
which is an ability that
the marine telepathy
that I didn't know was very unique to him.
Yes, it's not like Atlanteans can't do that. It's only he can.
His parcel tongue is very strong.
Yes. Yeah.
Never before have we seen, not since the king who must not be named. I love in the last Harry Potter movie where Ron has to go down and he says like Harry talks in his sleep.
Yeah, it kind of like undercuts like how cool parcel tongue is. It's like, oh, you just have to mimic the sound.
You can pretend to do it and it's fine.
I picture like Joey Tribbiani's French, like that's what Ron was saying in parcel tongue. He's just going, je te fleu.
It's like, I can speak French. Je te fleu. Exactly.
Yeah.
That moment of the aquarium is also very much like it's Aquaman.
Yeah.
The fish. But it was fun to learn that was not a thing that every Atlantean can do.
Yes.
And and that's another thing, is that Atlanteans all have different abilities and there are different types of.
Well, see, and this is the thing the movie doesn't get into too much, and we'll talk about this more. But the movie crams a lot in, but there's stuff that is not in there, which is like the idea that like Atlantis. We see how technologically advanced it is, but part of that technology is sorcery. And that's like how Mira has her aquakinetic abilities. It's a form of like Atlantean sorcery, basically. So we don't really delve into like the mechanics of that, but we see Mira use her like aquakinesis.
Yeah,
we see Arthur use his marine telepathy.
So you're getting some of these abilities, and I honestly,
we know that Orm has some form of like storm powers because he washes all that shit up onto the surface.
Yes.
So we don't know if that's like a big Atlantean device or if that's his trident, like it would be in the comics.
But you knew that he had the ability to do it.
But he has somehow achieved it.
Which is awesome, and that scene's really cool in general. Like, I really liked the big tidal wave coming in, and then I liked seeing the news the next day, and you see all the ships coming up. That was a cool visual component. I definitely, again, because someone who I'm coming in, I think, as raw as most, like, even DC fans, which is, I don't know a lot about Aquaman. It's not a character that gets that much spotlight very often, and definitely not his world. So unless you're specifically seeking it out, you're not generally getting a lot of information about this world. So I didn't know about the different kingdoms. That was so cool seeing that.
Well, the neat thing about that is that was like it was meant to be part of Jeff Johns' New 52 Aquaman run. There was going to be this arc called Rise of the Seven Seas, and we were going to learn what all the Seven Seas were.
That's so cool.
But then it never happened.
Which doesn't,
this
it's crazy.
Movie is really like a version or an adaptation of what was going to happen in the comics. So this is actually the first time we've.
And is Jeff Johns worked directly into this movie?
Yeah,
which is awesome. Then, right?
This is the first time we've gotten that vision of the Seven Seas. So Atlantis is the first sea, Zebul is the second. Then there's the brine, which are like the crustacean people, the
crab people, walk like crab, talk like people.
The Fisherman Kingdom, which we see, they're like the philosopher sort of mer folk.
Yeah.
The Trench, the Deserter Kingdom, which is long gone.
Yeah.
And the Hidden Kingdom.
So they call it the Deserter Kingdom. Is that because it is a desert?
I think that's the idea.
Because I thought the whole thing was that the kingdom existed when it wasn't a desert.
Well, and I think that might be part of it.
Maybe they changed the name to the desert.
Well, I thought maybe they were like the deserters, like they left, like they broke away.
But how apt that it became a desert.
Yeah, it really worked out for them.
Yeah, they're really playing the long con of that
Well,
one.
no, but it's acknowledged that. I mean, the Sahara's been the Sahara for a long time, longer than Atlantis has been sunk.
Yeah,
So I think they actually were on land because even in Atlan's holographic sort of thing, he says this trident has the power to unite our kingdoms above and below. So I assumed that the Deserter Kingdom must have existed at least for a bit on land.
yeah, but
While other things existed below.
But to unlock that thing, it said that there was water the last time that they had used this. So there must have been water in there in some component, even if it was an underground water cave. I don't really know.
Or something, yeah.
But it was definitely like a thing that I knew nothing about.
Yes.
But
Well, and that kingdom no longer exists, obviously.
the trench was real scary for me.
Yeah, yeah. So the trench, that's the first. The trench were featured in the first arc of the New 52. Aquaman. That's the first sort of appearance of the trench.
Those fish things were real scary. The fish people.
They were scary.
The ones with the little like the fins out and the real freaky looking thing that I'll jump on the boat.
That's the trench.
Yeah, those things scared the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought you meant like
The mer people? No,
Yeah.
no, they were that they didn't scare me. They're fine. They're
it's
sexy.
like they were so nice.
They're sexy.
Yeah, then you get fucking killed.
Oh yeah, that's not a good part. But the trench people things that scared the
Yes.
shit out of me. That
I feel like that leans into James Wan's like horror kind of sensibility. Is like,
oh totally. You definitely got
and when they jump into the water and like there's already a ton of the trench on the boat and then they jump in the water and there's like thousands of them like
yeah.
swarming. It was
Yeah.
like, oh jeez, it kind of gives you the creeps.
yeah, my thalassophobia
Right.
was it was I was worried about it, but it honestly didn't affect me as much as I thought it would. There were some like key scenes with any of the like giant underwater creatures that always scared me.
Sure.
But generally, like it only really scares me if you see the depth of how deep and alone something is, and then you see a giant creature that shouldn't exist on land.
Right, yeah.
That's when I start like that, or like a giant boat underwater. But like generally, everything was shot so closely that my brain didn't have a chance to go like, oh my god, you're under the water.
Right.
No one could hear you screech.
Now, leaving aside one very key thing that we both are going to talk about, what are some of the things that like didn't work for you in this movie? And I think you know the thing I don't want you to talk about yet.
Oh yeah, we'll dive into
Because we'll
that.
spend some time.
Yeah. So there was a lot of random things, little weird things that kind of took me out of the movie. When this movie is bad, this movie is very bad in my opinion.
Okay.
But it's few and far between.
Yeah.
And this movie is ebbs and flows. And for me, what the problem is when it's so good, you're like, this is great. So then when it dives suddenly into something that I didn't like, I was like, oh God.
Sure.
There's a lot of me like looking at you to see if and you're just like, I love Aquaman, staring up at the screen. But a lot of me looking to you being like, do you fucking see this shit? So,
Right.
I think you enjoyed it more than me, but the long embrace looking across like a few feet to each other, and then like that happened a few times in this movie that I
They're falling in love with each other.
yeah, but it happened a lot of like close-up shots of somebody looking at somebody else and that person looking at them. I don't
I think
know.
you're describing filmmaking.
Okay, I mean, I'm describing something that people do in filmmaking that I don't enjoy, which is just like trying to create a meaningful relationship through like glances.
So okay, now what I will say here is that your criticism is that it feels like manufactured.
Yes.
And I think the reason for that is one of my criticisms of the film. I know I haven't talked about what I loved yet.
Yeah.
But I'll get to that. There's plenty of time for that.
Yeah.
But one of my criticisms of the film is that as much as I love him to death and I think he's amazing,
Jason Momoa is a terrible actor.
he's not I don't think he's terrible. I just don't think he's great.
No.
Like he's good at a couple of things, and when he does,
Yeah, he's good at being muscly and large
and funny, and like he's
I've seen him on SNL. He's not funny. He's
Wow.
just when he's given the right lines and things
good.
that play towards what he's good at.
he plays good humor. You know, like he's good and fun to watch, and I still like him as Aquaman. But is he a strong enough actor to hold down like moments of real like emotion? Like no. And when the movie slows down to do those character pieces, like him and Mira on the boats and or like even him meeting his mother again in the hidden kingdom and stuff like that. It's like there's they're hugging when he's hugging his mom, and I'm like, cry, Jason. This is where you cry, Jason. And you can see him, he's just like,
I'm using all the eye muscles I have.
It kind of looks like he's trying to flex a tear
Yeah,
out.
it seriously does.
So I think where the movie tries to compensate is like maybe leaning on some of those old filmmaking things about like how do we frame like this relationship cinematically, because I can't just put the camera on them and let it happen.
Yeah.
And I do think that is a legitimate criticism. Now, does that ruin the movie for me? Absolutely not.
No,
in no way whatsoever.
And I'll say,
but
like,
it's there, and it's there enough that I notice it immediately after watching the movie.
I'll say that I loved this movie, I can even say,
Yeah,
in spite of itself.
right.
That there is so much good that it outweighs the terribleness of the really bad parts for me. Like one of the things that I really hate was they're like, we're in Maine and clearly you're in Australia. The voice acting, his father is so Australian.
What kind of MAGA shit is this? He could have moved to America.
Okay,
What
but
the fuck is wrong with you?
no, if he was just speaking with an Australian accent, it would be fine. But the point is he's clearly trying to force this Maine accent.
He's not.
He is. Oh my God,
He's not
is.
at all. He's speaking with his voice.
There's no way, because there's no way
Yes.
that he doesn't have an Australian accent.
He's speaking with his voice. You can hear his accent. But he's not faking a Maine accent.
I'm gonna need to see
and they're
interviews
also
with him.
clearly in Maine because all of the people in the bar are American. He's just a guy who moved to Maine.
They filmed it in Australia.
It doesn't matter where they filmed it. It's set in Maine.
I know, but it just for me, it felt very.
Do you complain when Arnold plays a cop? Like, be like, wait a minute, he's clearly Austrian.
When
His
Arnold,
name is Harry Tasker. Yeah, right.
it's if okay. If Arnold tried to,
I knew your alt-right anti-immigration thing would come up eventually.
Jesus, I just want things to be great again. I don't understand. I just think that
Put a wall up between us while we record.
yeah, that's right.
You're making me pay for
There
it.
needs to be a wall between Australia and North America.
It's called the ocean.
Yeah, it's not tall enough, but I'm not going to do this podcast until I get the $5 trillion.
We're shutting down the podcast.
I don't know. There's weird things like that take me out of it. There's no reason why I don't really like Arnold Schwarzenegger that much either, I guess. But
So that actually does bug you about
it does
Arnold?
bug. It bugs
Oh,
me
shit.
about.
Okay, because that's usually just like the joke that he's just like my name is Detective John Kimball. It's like,
Yeah,
no, it's not.
No. And
Your name is Hans.
when it's played to be funny, then it's good. I like it. But and he's just like, I've been living in Boston my whole life. Like it's just no.
Oh, see, it doesn't bother me. I just look right past it.
Oh well, you. I mean, you've loved DC for a long time. You're clearly forgiving. But
Well, no, it's not. No, I just mean in any movie, in an Arnold
Yeah.
movie or whatever. I just be like, yeah, fine. That's the actor they got. Like,
So okay, and then there is moments when the CGI bothers me. Anything above the water, the CGI really bothers me. The especially the scenes when they're like on the dock, and you can see the sort of very green screen like water and sky and like sun. Like,
right. It's clearly them standing in front of. Yeah,
and I'm just like, you could have just done it in front of the water. There's no like, unless the problem was the like Australian like opera like was behind it, and that's why they couldn't do it. But that really bothered me.
You mean the main opera house?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's right. Oh, this Maine coral reef is terrible. I have a huge issue with that. That's the thing that they've been doing with the last, like the DCEU in general. They tend to like to take out real like skylines and backgrounds and stuff and just put it with CGI. It's a thing that I notice a lot, and I just don't like the look of like the overly lit like characters behind a CGI background. Like that just it feels very fake and video gamey to me. And
I don't know, the whole movie though is like looks so bright and colorful.
So that's why I get why
because it's like a fantasy, right? Like I almost think of it more like Lord of the Rings, right? You know, like this. Yeah, technically, like the world is like an Earth, but it's also an Earth with cities that don't exist. So, like, who gives a shit, right? Like, it might as well just be a different place.
But guess what? In Lord of the Rings, they did a lot of great shots of New Zealand and didn't put any fake backgrounds or anything to it, right?
But they still alter them, and there's still lots of scenes of them standing in front of a green screen.
There is,
with
for
with
sure.
something in the background, and like matte paintings.
When they
and stuff.
need it, it makes a lot of sense. When they don't, it bothers me.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, okay, I guess.
So
I just those things like don't. There's like little details that 100% doesn't bother me.
But when you look at what they can do with The Dark Knight,
Yeah, but like my point is, I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks good, and I think it's like a stylistic, artistic choice. I don't look at it and go like, "Oh, where the fuck's the real ocean?" Like,
I think for me,
I don't do that.
maybe
I just think it looks cool. Like I'm like, yeah, I acknowledge that they're in front of a green screen. I think it looks dope. Great.
I equate it to like an overly produced studio album.
I guess
Where it's too much. And what I would love to see is the contrast between above and below. And below, you can have this amazingly CGI world. And above, I would like it to be a little bit more realistic so you see that contrast a little bit more.
I guess.
When everything is like that, nothing feels as special as it could if there was an actual contrast towards it.
I guess.
I'm just saying. I'm just like the scene when Mira's coming out of the water at the bar. I love that scene because she's so. I mean, to take a phrase, a fish out of water. Man, but also this movie loves to pretend that Justice League didn't happen.
They only reference it in that scene where she's like, "You stopped Steppenwolf," and then he's like, "All right, enough of that."
Yeah, well, and also it's just like, shouldn't he be more surprised that like if because they do know each other because they kind of met in Justice League.
They know each other a bit.
But I think a lot of people seeing this movie probably didn't know that, and they're just like, "Wow, he's real casual with this like fish lady who came out of the water." Like, so I think they assume you've seen Justice League, but don't want to talk about it. Like,
Yeah, which is I think the smartest way you can make this movie.
And I totally
is not to 100% sever ties, but like we're doing our own thing.
I was super impressed though with how much James Wan got away with in this movie. They clearly were just like, I don't know, just do whatever the fuck you want, because he threw away all the stylistic stuff from Aquaman from Justice League.
Yeah,
they were very he was very much just like
and everything.
He's very much just like, and the only thing left is Jason Momoa. Like everything else, he's just like, oh, we pretend like none of that else existed.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is funny, and it's impressive considering like how much studio involvement. And you realize that with DCEU, the less studio involvement, the better the movie tends to be.
But that's true of any movie, right? Like, I mean, what's the number one criticism of Marvel movies is that maybe they all are too similar to each other. That there is just a house style, and even if it's good, it's just that they're all one block, right?
I mean, it makes sense why they do that.
But that's
though.
a studio involvement. I mean, it's working for them, but that's still a thing where it's like, it would be nice to see like
something a little different.
Or see any of the character of the director in the piece.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like,
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's working for them, so I guess it's doing that in the good way, but it's still like a thing, right?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
After 21 movies, now it's like, after like 6 movies, like who gives, it's like, no, these are great. But like after 21, it's like, come on, like, let's... I'm excited for like the things that happen in those Marvel movies, but not like the experience of watching it.
From a film standpoint.
Whereas with Aquaman or Batman v Superman or things I'm excited to see how it's made. Like that's part of the experience of it.
For sure, yeah, without a doubt. I think an issue I have with this movie as well is that it feels at the same time they got too much freedom, and I'm wondering if the things that the thing that I hated the most about that was that the studio or was that James Wan? Because I need to know now.
The thing that we hate the most about this movie had to have been the studio.
There's no way that it couldn't have been because it feels so.
There's no way that it's not because it's so awful.
Yeah, it's really bad, and so I'll say that that. In spite of itself, this movie ended up being really good. I think that James Wan definitely put his little touches on stuff, but the problem is sometimes it felt like, oh, that's a James Wan thing. The like random explosions and scene kind of bothered me.
It is kind of funny how many scenes end with a surprise explosion.
Yeah, where it's just like a random conversation. Suddenly, from the right or from the left of the screen, there's just suddenly a like jarring explosion. There's a lot of jump scares in this.
It happens a lot. Yeah,
and normally it wouldn't bother me, but it's just not a movie that makes sense for that many jump scares. So I get it like once or twice, but it to the point where I was like, they're doing a lot of this while I was watching a movie. As somebody who generally I don't watch movies with that much of a critical eye. I love terrible movies.
Oh yeah.
I love terrible movies, and usually that stuff does not bother me. But if I notice something in a movie, this movie constantly was taking me out of the experience. Now I was watching it with the critical eye intentionally, which I don't normally do.
Because we knew we were going to record.
Yeah, we knew we were going to
We're
record
we
this.
should be looking for stuff to talk about.
Exactly, and so there was that component of it, and so maybe in other viewings I won't see it like that, but there was definitely things in it that I was like, what the fuck. Sure. But the random explosions were definitely one of those things. I think that whenever Jason Momoa gets to play either like surfer, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Boy guy, it's always really fun.
Sure.
Whenever he gets to play brutish dumb guy, it's always really funny.
Yep.
Any other thing that I don't really enjoy. So him trying to be like earnest or the hero, I don't want it. Or him like being like, I'm not the hero. And I'm like, just you're a party dude. You want pizza and to skateboard with your like 5 other friends. Like that's all you want.
learned karate from a rat.
Yeah, like that's clear. Like, and that's the other thing too, is that when he's learning the moves,
Right.
They didn't really build that relationship well enough. It was just kind of like, and then one day that guy showed up and taught him how to do karate, and it was like, oh, okay.
Well, but I mean,
They have to force a lot of plot into this, and so I get it. And considering that they do it,
it is in there because like when they're sitting at the bar, he and his dad, they see the thing on the screen that Aquaman saves the sub, and his dad goes, "Oh, you're doing what Volko taught you to do."
Yeah,
and then you see, and then he's like, "This is where Volko taught me how to swim," and you get that little bit, and then you see him like fighting on the beach, like you're supposed to imply from 3 different moments that, like, for a long period of his childhood, Volko was training him and grooming him.
Yeah. It's true. That one scene did feel super forced, though, was when they, like, go to that cliffside. And it feels like a thing that they did in post, where it was like, just put in a couple scenes where they can tie back to Volko. Yeah. And he was like, oh. He gets real quiet. She's like, what? And he's like, this is where I learned how to swim. And it's just like, shut up. Like, it felt very much like we need a plot device to continue this relationship.
Yeah, I guess.
It felt like
those things are so small though. They don't. But like when I'm watching this movie, like, let's take a DC movie that I do not enjoy at all, even in like a guilty pleasure way. Green Lantern.
Oh yeah.
So let's take that as like where does that movie fail for me? Is it that like I don't think like Tim Robbins is like essentially like or totally earnest as his character as like the senator or whatever, like like who cares? Like the problem is that they get the character wrong, or they spend 20 minutes watching his dad explode. It's like big structural.
I love cutting back to that scene.
It's like big structural problems in that movie, right? So I think for me, as long as you get the big pillars right, I can overlook. I mean, I can still acknowledge it. I can see it. I can see the cracks in the armor and stuff like that, but that won't take me out of a movie. Big thing that we'll talk about later.
Yes.
Accepted.
Yeah. But
because that one really hurt me.
But I mean, and you mentioned pillars, and that's a great thing to mention, because this movie is built off of pillars of amazingness.
Yeah.
There is things that take me out of this movie, and I could nitpick this movie to no end, because there is a lot of very little things that bother me, and when you put them all in a long string, it seems like it's a bad movie. This movie is full of these pillars that are strong enough to hold up against all of that shit, because when this movie is fun and it's an adventure movie, more than any of the other DC movies that we've seen, more than any superhero movie I've seen in a very long time.
It's very globetrotting.
It is. Yeah. It feels like a Where in the World is Arthur, like San Diego. Like it's, you get that sense, and it's fun to watch them go from like the ice planet to the like sand planet to the water planet to the. It's fun to see them go through these different like landscapes and stuff. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's true.
I loved those set pieces. I think this movie is built off of set pieces, and when you look at like that, this should be your dream movie because it's Lord of the Rings,
Yep.
it's Star Trek, and it's Aquaman.
And like Indiana Jones.
Yeah. It's basically your entire childhood in a
is.
movie.
Yeah.
There's no way that you were never not going to be obsessed with this movie.
That's true. And now, and here's the thing. So I've already talked about. I don't think Momoa is like for example, if
He's not your dream Aquaman, I would say, but
he's not, but I think he's great.
Yeah.
But I also would never want him, say, cast as like a Bruce Wayne. And that's not about the physicality. It's about like Bruce Wayne needs to be able to like look into the camera and weep. And I don't trust him to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, unless you put like a pizza in front of him and say that he can't reach it, that's the only way that I could see Jason Momoa doing that.
You know what I mean? So that's a criticism I have of the movie. And so in the parts where they slow down for character moments, that it does really slow down because you're kind of watching like come on, Jason, like take 5. Like,
Can you borrow a feeling?
So that is a thing. But generally speaking, so you talked about how like visually strong this movie is. So that extends to like the effects, like how they represent things on screen. So like the marine telepathy has like the rings, like the ripples,
Love it, yeah,
just
yeah.
like it does in the comics.
And
It looks like-
it
looks-
feels legit, like it doesn't feel hokey.
This is also a movie that doesn't shy away from how things look in the comic books. And that includes like the technology or the architecture in
The
Atlantis.
seahorses.
Yeah, they're riding these crazy like animals and stuff. The costumes, like Ocean Master's final costume, like with the fins and everything, and the fact that the mask emotes, like the eyebrows and stuff move, and it looks really good. Like that costume's incredible. King Nereus looks great. Mira looks great. Arthur in the orange and
God.
green. Even Jason Momoa with the hair and the beard and that, he looks like fucking Aquaman. It looks so good. It doesn't look silly. He looks like a warrior because they do such a good job of like the world building, right? That seeing a brightly colored fish scale armor at the end of the movie, that you don't go like, like you go like, yes, like that's what the king would fucking wear.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the thing, and they do a
it
great.
looks so
they do
good.
a great job by building out the armor of everybody else around him,
Yeah.
so that when that happens, you're just like, yeah. And I mean, that was the thing. When that scene happens, I was like jumping out of my chair. I loved that.
Oh, when he comes out of the waterfall.
Yeah, and the reality is when I saw that in the trailer, I roll my eyes. But when it gets to that point in the movie, I was just like, fucking yeah, Aquaman.
Because there's a lot of earning it. I think the closest we get to like a real like earnest Jason Momoa scene is immediately before he gets that suit, where he's in the depths with the super Kraken played by Julie Andrews.
Because what was it that you said? I love that there was two.
Mary Poppins and Aquaman came out the same week, and only one of those movies had Julie Andrews in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, but in that scene where he's saying like I'm nobody, I'm here because I have to be, like that's I think that is the most earnest scene we get out of Jason Momoa in the whole movie. Which and like what great timing. Because now the big, that then you get like that sort of like tingly kind of ramp up, and he comes out in the suit, and you're like, he's fucking Aquaman.
It's true.
Like, it's like that's a really really cool thing. But the fact that this movie just leans so far into like, there was a thing when we were starting to make comic book movies that was like we still wanted to feel like comic books are for kids. We don't want this to feel silly, and so the costumes all got like realistic and it just like it looks stupid, but like there's a whole scene of Black Manta just being like, oh, this is a crazy made up gun from the sea, I'm just gonna put it into a helmet and wear it.
I think
and it's fine.
Let's talk about Black Manta because I think that it could have been so bad, and they earned that costume. They earned every like comic accurate point in this movie, but that one is so cool.
And you know what, the movie really like tiptoes the line, because there's a thing also in early comic book movies where it's like, why would anyone choose this name? And you make up some sort of stupid story, and you're like, that's where they get the name.
Yeah.
And this movie almost does that shit to Manta, but they kind of stick the landing. Like, So in the beginning, when he's with his dad,
Yeah.
his dad gives him the knife, and he goes like, "Your grandfather, he was one of the frogmen in the war, and he was so stealthy they called him Manta."
Manta, yeah.
And I kind of went like, it's like, did they? And then, but then like that, there's that fight, and then just like in the comics, Aquaman is responsible for the death of Manta's dad, which is like a ballsy move in a superhero movie to be like, no, he just like lets him die straight up.
Well, he kind of just goes, it's up to you to figure this out.
But it seems somehow even more explicit than the like the Batman Begins, like, I don't have to save you.
I like that.
Because in Batman Begins, they play that as like, he found a way to do it without killing.
Yeah.
but in Aquaman, it's like, no, like, you killed him. Like,
What is it? Something like something along the lines of
you crushed him with a missile and let him drown.
Is this something along the lines of like ask the ocean for mercy or something like that? Which I love. That's
Yeah. But you get where Arthur's coming from.
He's like, you killed all of these people.
Exactly.
Like, why is your life worth saving after that?
But it's still his fault. You know? Like, and they play that really well. And so Manta is sort of on this basically blood vendetta. It's his only mission is just to kill Aquaman. He says,
I don't want money.
He's a treasure hunter, and he's like, I don't want the money. I want to kill this fucker.
Yeah.
And that Yahya Abdul Mateen II plays Black Manta so well. He's incredible. The costume looks great. But they kind of land that story. Like, it did feel hokey at first when he's like, your granddad, I called him Manta.
Yeah.
But then when he shows up and he's in the full suit and he's like, now I have all this Atlantean gear. I know I can hurt you now because I couldn't before. He's like, now you call me Black Manta. And like fucking like shoots him with the eye beams. It's like, they actually earn that. So they found a way to like take all these old comic book movie tropes.
Well, they even explain making the head bigger.
Yeah,
like,
they use them, but also they don't fall into them. Like they find a way to not make it stale. You know what I mean?
they don't use it as a crutch either, which I think Green Lantern tries to do a few times.
Maybe instead of like it being like a thing you have to do, they're like, what's a fun way to use it?
They make a good movie and then include that stuff, I think, as like set pieces and things like that, and make the story better with it.
And then, like you said too, like the set pieces. So some of the stuff underwater, like the Council of the Kings, all those statues where we first learn about the Seven Seas. That's a really beautiful set. Atlantis is obviously visually like overwhelming, actually, between sea creatures and vehicles and weapons and structures and ruins. And there's like a shipwreck, and then there's the Ring of Fire, like the Colosseum sort of area, and all these big statues and shit. And then like the armies and like their sort of weapons and ships, and
It all feels very unique to their area.
well, yeah, because the Brine, instead of having
fucking
ships, they've
Brine
got like
King.
giant crustaceans,
The
like
Brine
hurling,
King is so rad. Oh my
hurling
god.
lava and shit like
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah, I mean the movie the art direction and the design of characters and sets and locations and things like that is so inventive. But to me, kind of like you were talking about that you'd want the surface to just be like real.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, that would be jarring to me to be like it's too different. I like that, like when they go to Sicily, it's still like colorful.
That drives me fucking
But it's also
nuts.
like the whole point of that scene in particular, but also in the movie, is that like the surface world has something to offer, and there is beauty there too. Like, it's not worth extinguishing.
I get that understanding of it. I just think it felt like a cut from the Mamma Mia movie. It was just the music, the like. I don't think they earned Mira and Arthur's relationship in that movie.
It does feel a little quick.
I just feel like
But,
they definitely played this movie like they were only getting one of these. Well, Mira needs to eventually be the Queen of Atlantis.
Well, this is the thing, right? There is a lot in this movie, right? We get the Seven Seas. We get Mira, Vulko, Nereus, Ocean Master, Black Manta, Aquaman, Atlanta, the Trench. We get Atlantis. We get Zebel. We get, Dr. Stephen Shin. We get Manta. We get, or I said him already.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, all of these things are in there.
So, and they did a lot of great work earning a lot of those different pieces and it feeling like this is obviously
this is a stuffed movie.
I just don't. I think that relationship felt a little bit tough for me to believe, and because it just like they were just like they love each other, and I'm like, well, how? I mean, they've just been on this adventure. They like,
Well, here's the thing. They never come out. This is something the movie is smart about. They never say like "I love you" or like anything
no,
like
thank
that.
God.
What they do have is that, you know, she's seeing that there is more to him than just the brute, and he is seeing that, like, you know,
And they have a longing look across the small distance.
but they never. But you know what? But if at the end she was like, "I love you," then I'd be like, "Get fucked."
Yeah, it turned into a fucking Hallmark movie.
that's
They're
not
just
what
like,
it is.
and now I'm going to marry you.
They've been on this crazy adventure. It's been high adrenaline. They've gotten to know each other, and so she kisses him, and that's where they end. You know what I
And
mean?
I'm okay with that. I was okay with that.
That feels earned. So that's I think where the movie is smart about that. Like if they went the one step further, and she was like, "I love you," and he was like, "Be my queen," then I'd be like, "No."
When they were in Italy, though, you could have taken the music that was out of there, which I already didn't like, and replaced it with "When the Moon Hits You," and I would have been like, "Yeah, that's." It doesn't surprise me that that's the fucking song in this. It felt.
Although I will say this, so the orchestral score of this movie is fucking
if
stellar.
the whole thing was orchestral, it would have been great. If the whole thing was the electronic, it would have been even better.
Yeah, there's some of that electronic, like Thor Ragnarok stuff,
or like
in
Stranger
Sicily.
Things,
Yeah.
kind of. If that was the whole soundtrack, which I think it should have been, it would have been a perfect movie.
But there are a couple of moments, and this is where I think we both.
Do you want to get into it?
I think we both think this is a studio thing. There's a couple of moments of like pop music, it's stuff that's clearly on the soundtrack in the movie, and it does feel like it wasn't the first choice.
I will tell you this.
And the number one, this is the one thing that like took me out of this movie, and it actually, if you can imagine something taking me out of an Aquaman movie,
Yeah.
like that's a fucking feat. It's fucking ocean to ocean. Fuck you, Pitbull.
Hashtag put the dog down.
Hashtag put the dog down.
I will say that if
that moment, them coming out of the water, like going to the Sahara, also like they're coming out of the water
if it's going to be like, yeah.
Well, but they're coming out
Like,
of the water. I expected then the shot to turn to people on the beach being like, "Oh, who just walked out of the water?"
yeah.
But no one is there.
No.
It's just them on their own, and with fucking Pitbull yelling that he's the Great Gatsby. Like,
because Aquaman.
so that feels like the studio being like, "We got Pitbull on the soundtrack. You really need to like
Put it
that
in the movie. I would say this, that if
that felt really shitty.
if I had gone to that movie without you, there's a potential that I would have walked out in that part.
It's pretty, and it sounds like hyperbole, but that moment is so jarring and so bad. It's so like
You could cut that whole thing out, and I hope that somebody either makes a cut with that not in it, that whole scene, just cut it out, or make or make a new soundtrack and someone like release a version of it with just that not on it, and I would be the first to buy a copy of it.
That's like how I always petition for a gargoyle-less version of Disney's Hunchback.
I can't agree with that because I like the gargoyles and the cartoon was great.
No, the gargoyles
The
suck.
TV show was so good.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, oh, it was so good. I had all the toys for all the gargoyles.
I
too.
fast forward through the gargoyles when I watched that movie.
Those McDonald's toys were so on point.
It'd be better if they didn't exist.
You better if you did.
Good luck with your Patreon, the Dr. No One podcast. Okay, so I do feel like it's very easy for us to discuss the things that we don't like or that stand out. I do want to try and get back to the stuff that I love because despite all of the things
I could go see this movie again today at the theater, and I would be
despite
happy.
all
to.
of the things that we both have criticized in it, this movie is so much fun. I think
really great movie.
we kind of talked about it a little bit before
Yeah.
we started recording, but like the thing that this movie gets right is that it's a movie, not a film.
It's true. It knows what it is.
And don't get me wrong, I appreciate, the Zack Snyder thing. I like Man of Steel. I like Batman v Superman. I like when a comic book, I like The Dark Knight. I like when a comic book movie aims for something more than what the genre maybe has been.
more than just a king.
What could be greater than a king? A hero. Oh no, that's Nicole Kidman. I shouldn't have said it in the Momoa voice. I'm like Great Gatsby.
Oh fuck! No.
If he comes out of the waterfall and fucking ocean to ocean, please.
He starts rapping. They should have had him rap at the end of the
Do you
movie.
know what? They should have played Ocean to Ocean while he's fighting Ocean Master at the end.
That would have, yeah, there we go. That would have been the worst part of that entire movie.
I could be a DC exec.
yeah, oh yeah.
I think I just proved it.
yeah, you're making the right decision.
What was I saying?
We're talking about film.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And Zack Snyder.
I like when comic book movies aim for something a little higher, right? Or like Winter Soldier or stuff like that. But there's something to be said, especially when you're doing something that's very like fantastical, or there's a lot of world building in that. Like, for a first movie to introduce a character and his like supporting cast to people that probably don't know much about it, it's fun to just make something like bombastic and big and colorful and exciting. And that's what this movie is.
But the problem with that is, where does that leave us? What can we do with a second movie?
so much still.
For me, I think it needs to be a genre film.
So now that we've had the movie,
Yeah.
now you want a film.
Yeah, give me your bottle episode, give me your genre, give me something that scales everything back, and you get like, give me a heist, give me something that's a little set in a different time. Give me something that's different.
I think
Bring him to space. I don't care. Do what Thor did. Do like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I think what I'd like to see in a second movie, because where we leave off Dr. Stephen Shin, the one person on Earth who's like, there's a fucking Atlantis.
Yeah.
The one person who's like, even in a world with Superman, everyone's like, there's no Atlantis.
Yeah, which is hilarious. They're like, yeah, but like, how could that possibly exist?
Oh, there's a Krypton, but there's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
Atlantis. So where we leave off, Stephen Shin finds Black Manta washed up. And Stephen Shin says, like, this is Atlantean tech, isn't it? And he says, yeah, I'll, help you get it if you help me get him, and throws a knife through a, like, who is Aquaman sort of poster. So in a second movie, I think it'd be interesting to see Stephen Shin so desperate to be like scientifically accepted and like vindicated that he sort of unwillingly teams with Black Manta, almost like Collateral, like he's the cab driver. He like starts willingly, and then he's like, oh fuck, like how do I get out of this? But Manta, and basically it's just like Manta maybe goes on a bit of a killing spree. There's another arc in the comics called The Others, where these other people, a sort of like former team of Aquamans, have other Atlantean artifacts that give them powers. So if Manta goes after them and starts killing them to draw Aquaman out, to have his big showdown, I think that would be neat. I don't know if it's too much or not, but it may be kind of neat to like bring Calderon in, who in the comics is the second Aqualad, but he's the Aqualad in Young Justice, but he's also important because he's Manta's son, but he's like good.
Yeah.
And like part Atlantean, like
I just
like something there would be neat, but that might be too much. But just something like Black Manta is going around the world offing the others, and it draws Aquaman out, and it's just like a really like brutal personal.
But then at that point, I feel like you can't. I don't know if you can up the stakes from this movie.
Well, you certainly can't up the spectacle.
No, and that's
You
my
can up
biggest
the stakes by making it more personal, but like,
then
but it wouldn't be like armies and.
if you make it more personal, though, I feel like it's really gonna show where Jason Momoa is lacking.
I mean,
right?
there's a risk there too. Yeah, I think what you do there is you keep Mira right next to him the whole time, because Amber Heard can take it.
She can act. Yeah.
I think that's what you have to do.
Amber Heard can get it. That's for sure. But I think that I can, in my mind, I can visualize Aquaman 2, and it looks the same, and it's kind of the same, but it's got a slightly different storyline, and that feels like it's not going to be a good movie. This movie is so great because it's the first time we're seeing this stuff where we're getting everything is brand new and exciting.
Yeah.
If you try to just show us the same stuff again with a slightly different storyline, it's going to fail.
I do want to bring up a couple of these aren't like good or bad things. They're just like moments in the movie where I was like, did that just happen?
Oh, yeah.
A big one for me is that the hidden sea the Seventh Sea. They get to it through the trench.
Oh yeah, we have to talk
and
about
it
this.
says that it's in the Earth's core, and that's where we meet Atlanta. That's she escaped the trench because we've been told she's been sacrificed to the trench. She's dead, but she escapes them and ends up in the Hidden Sea, and that's where Atlan's trident is, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's at Earth's core, but it's like a world with dinosaurs, and there's still a sun in the sky. And I was like, did Aquaman just introduce Scartaris? Because
Without a doubt, I think there's no
exactly
doubt.
what Scartaris is.
There's no way that they did not include that. When you start including dinosaurs, there's no way that that's not.
And you know what? Like, that feels like a Jeff Johns move to be like, what's the Seventh Sea? I want to do this. Why don't I tie it into a thing that already exists in DC and like fold them together? And so now I think Scartaris exists in the DCEU. Like, we could
There is a world.
you could go what we just described with the sequel, something very personal, like a brutal kind of Black Manta vengeance thing.
Yep.
You could go, it doesn't have to be for the second one.
Like
It
a
could be
Land
for
of the Lost?
You could do the other way, where it's, like a land,
Which I think Joe-
if the warlord, like Travis Morgan, he crashes his Air Force plane and he ends up in the Hidden Sea and he becomes the warlord and he's fighting Deimos, and then he realizes, like, wait a minute, there used to be a thing in that cave, or, when the power of the trident was removed,
Yeah.
something happened to the world, and he manages to contact Aquaman, and they have to go back to the Hidden Sea. But now it's this like sword and sorcery kind of story,
Which-
that would be pretty fucking dope.
That
too,
would
actually.
work. That would totally work.
That would be pretty cool.
I think that's a world that you could create, and it would totally work.
Yeah.
And I'm totally on board for something like that.
I think I would be down for that too, actually.
Thou shalt love pizza, dude.
You're really harping on the pizza thing. He doesn't eat pizza once in this
No,
movie.
but he's a fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Aquaman. And
Right.
I just think that's...
Which one is he? He's clearly Raphael.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as I said it.
Raphael / Michelangelo.
I guess he's got a little bit of Mikey in him.
Yeah. He's a party surfer skater dude. Yeah.
Not Donatello.
No. Though I think Mira makes a great April.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right?
Other just like little like things that I loved.
Yep.
I really I know I've mentioned it off the top, but I really love how they did the marine telepathy thing. They didn't overuse it. It's only shown twice very briefly before the third act.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the third act, when he gets like when he grabs the trident, there's this sequence like where you see it like all the power firing through his synapses, and it's like it's unlocking the full potential of that power. You see it like connecting him to the entire web of marine life and stuff like that. And then he when he's riding the Julie Andrews Super Kraken, he like sends out like the waves, and all of the sea creatures like join him, and it doesn't look stupid.
It does.
It's like, it's kind of, you're like, like he's commanding the whole ocean. It's like pretty fucking cool.
It is.
And like squids start like ripping guys apart, and like sharks are eating people, and fucking like narwhal or a swordfish or whatever like stabs a couple of guys. Like they took all of the stuff that people would say is the stupidest stuff in Aquaman and made it so fucking cool. I really love this movie. I don't want anyone to like listen to this and like the gripes that we had about it and think that I did not fucking love this movie.
Well, I mean, this is a movie that you've been waiting for your entire childhood.
Yes,
I think, right?
And I think I put it number 2 of all DC live action films.
And I think
It's Dark Knight and then Aquaman.
I think it might
Sorry,
be
Man
for
of
me as
Steel.
well.
Sorry, Justice League, you're down to 18.
I think it might be for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
so good. I've seen it twice already, and I'm thinking of going again.
I would see this again. I think that for me, this, you know where this reminds me a lot of, and is kind of on the same sort of. The only other movie I've seen a whole bunch of times was 300. And I
I've
get
seen
a
that
very
movie a lot,
yeah,
too,
and
yeah.
that I think that because it has so much rewatchability.
But again, that's another movie where it's a stylistic, artistic choice, and they're standing in front of the green screen the whole time. Did you watch that movie and go like, oh, that's not fucking Grease?
No, because all of it was just on the same plane, right? There was nothing to juxtapose it against, so it was fine.
Yeah, fair enough. bad example.
But but that was a movie. That's a movie that feels very much like us. It knows what it is.
Yes.
You're going to go kick some ass, and it's like you're just men being men, and like I loved that.
One last thing that we didn't mention, but I know we both thought was cool. That's neat in this movie is it's so cool what they did with the fight choreography. They clearly put a lot of
all the dimensions.
They put a lot of time into the idea of like Atlanteans fight in 3 dimensions. What does combat look like when you're not bound by gravity? Like, that's a criticism of like Superman movies, is that the flying fights don't really do anything special. It's just flying and punching. But Aquaman, you see like the acrobatics, you see how they use 3 dimensions, like the technique is different. You can tell they actually sat down, like the fight choreographers, and actually like worked out what does combat look like in that scenario.
I think that's going to change.
Very cool.
I'm hoping that other movies take this
Yeah.
and use it for the next flying hero movie or something.
Yeah.
That because it's a thing that has always really been difficult for any of those.
If we ever get a Hawkman movie, I fully expect to see good aerials, because that's the thing with Hawkman, right? Superman can fly, Hawkman flies.
That's what Aquaman does. Yeah. Or Hawkman.
Hawkman.
Oh my god! I just want it to be real.
We did it again.
Oh my god!
Yeah. But yeah, I it's important to give that a shout out, because that Ring of Fire fight, the way Orm and Arthur fight is really, really visually interesting.
Without a doubt, I think that when this again, I'll keep going back to it. When this movie does it right, it does it so right.
Yeah.
And it's a world that I want to go back to. It's a world that I wish that I could learn more about. This makes me want to read Aquaman.
Oh my god, I have so many books you can read.
Do you? You? Is that just your big Aquaman dick?
Oh, it's so hard now.
Did it live up to what you wanted it to be?
Yes. Yeah, it actually did somehow. Yeah. It's a ton of fun. It includes so much of the lore, but it's not like bogged down by it. You know, like it's not just people standing on screen like fucking Elrond telling us like the history of the thing. Don't get me wrong, I love Lord of the Rings, but like if I didn't love Lord of the Rings and then watch that movie, I'd be like, get to it. But like Aquaman is very lore heavy. It's such like a crazy new world. I mean, the deep sea is stranger to us than space.
It's true.
We have so many space movies. We have like sort of like a cultural consensus of what space might look like. But we have nothing like that for the deep sea. So it's really cool to see that explored. The casting is really good across the board. Willem Dafoe as Vulko. Patrick Wilson is so fucking good in everything I see him in, but he's great as Orm, as Ocean Master. Dolph Lundgren as King Nereus is really good. Yahya Abdul-Mateen, like I said, as Black Manta he gets it. Like he plays it perfectly.
I think
Jason Momoa
Patrick Wilson is perfect. I think
Jason Momoa is very good in this movie. All of what we've said taken into account.
For the version of Aquaman that they have put together, he's perfect for it. I think.
I mean, moving forward, and especially if they take some of the spectacle out and make it a more personal story, I do wonder if he can do it. I hope he can. I hope that's like a challenge to rise to. You know, I don't want him to flounder.
Yeah. Without a doubt, I think that this also makes me so excited for Shazam.
Yes.
Because what this does is it goes, hey, DC can be fun without being Marvel. It can do its own thing while still having a lot of fun with itself. Aquaman, in its essence, isn't a silly concept, but they found a way to go, people make fun of it. We're going to have fun with it while still taking it serious. Shazam is hilarious in the concept of it. It's funny in all the trailers we've seen. This is going to be a fun movie. We now can see that they can do that while still making it DC and not making it Marvel. I think that I'm more excited for Shazam than I have been.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, and I think the thing that I expect to see in Shazam is that the trailers will lean very on the fun side.
Yeah.
But that the movie itself will probably strike a good balance the way Aquaman did.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I'm ready for that. And I think you're right. I am more excited for Shazam now.
It's true. At the end of
forget that movie is happening.
I know. Me too. And every time I remember, I get excited again for it.
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is a great movie. If you haven't seen it,
Totally.
you gotta go see it.
Oh my
'Cause
God, do it.
It's,
If you haven't seen it, like, sorry for listening to this whole thing where we just talked about it.
whatever. I find myself listening to podcasts of movies that I haven't seen yet, and it just makes me want to see it. Spoilers don't generally bother me. I think
Fair
that's why
enough.
I don't care about them on this podcast. No one's complained yet, so I think one time we had a complaint.
One time we had a complaint. I still feel like
And it was not
I was
a-
a couple of weeks out from the comic coming out. Like, I think it was fine.
I think it was totally fine, but at the end of the day, it's worth seeing it. It'll reinvigorate your interest. I think in Aquaman, it certainly has sparked an interest in me.
Yeah.
So hopefully we haven't really done any real Aquaman episodes yet.
No, so in the free, the main podcast, our first episode back in 2019,
Yeah.
it's going to be an Aquaman episode.
It is.
So you guys get our first thoughts and everything. We're not going to obviously spend this kind of time on the movie when we do
No.
our Aquaman episode because we've already done it for you guys. So
Yes.
you guys get to hear all of our sort of nitty gritty thoughts about the movie. But
You paid for it.
2019, our first episode back will be about Aquaman, comics, cartoons, everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. All right. Well, I think that we did it. I feel like we've summarized this,
Yeah.
our feelings on this.
Totally.
The good and the Pitbull.
And the best part is that we did this for the first time.
That's right. This had never happened again. That's right. First thoughts, just fresh out of the theater. This was days ago. I mean, today.
What?
Hashtag put the dog down. With that, the Dr. DC podcast will be back next Friday. So stay tuned. Keep paying because we're at the end of December and I want that sweet, sweet January cash.
Jesus.
But yeah, ciao, ciao.
Adios.
Aquaman, all the superheroes. They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure. They are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.